Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the headlines. Israel has reopened the Al-Rashid border crossing with Jordan today, 5 days after closing it when a Jordanian truck driver opened fire and killed 2 Israeli soldiers. The crossing is the sole passenger gateway and main commercial route between Jordan and the West Bank. France and Saudi Arabia will host a major summit in New York today with many world leaders. Among them, some are expected to formally recognize the Palestinian state, even as Israel and the United States are boycotting the event. Meanwhile, Israeli officials have warned of possible West Bank annexation and bilateral measures against France. Iran's atomic energy chief and vice president Mohammad Eslami has arrived in Moscow for talks. Now, according to the Iranian embassy in Russia, this visit comes after the UN Security Council refused to permanently lift sanctions, with 3 European countries seeking to reimpose them over alleged violations of the 2015 nuclear deal. Moving on to Russia, where a Ukrainian drone strike on a resort in Crimea has reportedly killed 3 people while injuring 16. Russian authorities have also stated that the strike was on a civilian area with no military presence. North Korea's Kim Jong-un has now said he is open to talks with the United States if Washington drops its denuclearization demands, expressing fond memories of US President Trump's visit to North Korea in his first term. The North Korean leader has also reiterated his stance, stating that he has no intentions to unite with the South. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has warned of a crisis-level situation if the trade demands of the United States are accepted without safeguards. President Lee cited disputes over investments and currency swaps as the key focus of his American trip, where he will be attending the UNGA. Hundreds of demonstrators led by Generation Z have protested for a second day in Lima against President Dina Boluarte's government, with clashes injuring at least 18 people, including 12 police officers and 6 journalists. The unrest was sparked by a new pension law and fueled by widespread anger over corruption and crime. Super Typhoon Gaza has now registered a wind speed of over 215 kilometers per hour and gusts up to 295 kilometers per hour. It has slammed the northern Philippines with storm surges above 3 meters. Now, according to the local state weather agency, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has ordered the Disaster Response Agency and all government bodies to be on full alert as storm warnings rage. Alright viewers, those are the headlines. Our top focus: Britain's Foreign Minister Yvette Cooper has defended her country's decision to recognize the Palestinian state. Speaking in New York ahead of the UN General Assembly, she has stated that the move was to keep the hope of a 2-state solution alive. Cooper has warned that the devastating humanitarian situation in Gaza, expansion of West Bank settlements and continued holding of Israeli hostages all put regional stability at risk. Listen in.
So this is a historic step and a moral step, which we're taking alongside our allies to recognise the state of Palestine in order to keep the hope of the 2-state solution alive at a time when there is a real risk that it is in peril as a result of the devastation in Gaza, the continued holding of hostages and the expansion of settlements. And if we don't act now, the risk is that everyone will just turn their backs on the 2-state solution that is the only lasting way to get peace and security for the region. That is why it's so important. We are clear that Hamas is a barbaric terrorist organisation, continues to commit atrocities and can have no place in the future of Palestine. It must release the hostages immediately.
Britain has joined Canada, Australia and Portugal in recognizing Palestine. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slammed the move as well, and America has called it performative and reckless too. Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Peter Baum, foreign editor of Weekly Blitz, joining us live from London. Thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting development, considering the fact that Britain had played a very crucial role after the Second World War in the creation of Israel as a modern nation state. In light of that, we've earlier in the day heard from Israelis in Tel Aviv. They've slammed the move by the British government as hypocritical. What is your take?
Well, it is a major hypocritical move. And what is also very interesting is the comments just made that we heard from Yvette Cooper. What she's saying is the British government are going to recognise a state of Palestine, but Britain will not recognise who the Palestinians want as their leaders. This is British imperialism. Now, Hamas is a terrorist group, but let's say the Palestinians in the newly formed state of Palestine want Hamas as their government. Who are Britain to say who the Palestinians should have as their governing body or not? This is sheer British imperialism all over again. It is a reckless move. It will not ensure peace in the region, and her comments saying that it will keep the two-state solution alive, it will do just the reverse of that, because the Israelis under Netanyahu are taking an even harder line stance by developing more into the West Bank. So on every count, it's a reckless move, it's a stupid move. And can I just add one other thing? Several years ago, I was at an event where Yvette Cooper's husband, Mr. Ed Balls, who was a member of the Blair government in those days, said to all attendees at the event, and I quote, "No Labour government will ever recognise a state of Palestine." So I'm assuming she's still married to Mr. Balls, and it would be interesting to see what their dinner table conversations are like. Sheer hypocrisy, a reckless move, and Britain interfering as an imperialist power, as if days gone past were still with us. Stupid.
All right, Mr. Baum, I request you to stay on with us. We're tracking some further developments. The Londoners have in fact reacted rather positively to Britain's decision to recognize a Palestinian state, though some do say that it should have come earlier. Listen in.
I think it's a fantastic thing. It should have happened earlier. I think a lot more needs to be done to protect what's going on in Palestine and make a stronger state. I think at this stage it probably is quite symbolic, but we can all but hope. But I do think the UK needs to start taking a much stronger stance in this.
I think it's a good thing to recognise Palestine state, but they could have done it very, very earlier stage and avoid all this killing of children in Palestine. That's my opinion. But at least they have done it, that's a good thing. It's kind of like a waiting to genocide, keep going, exterminate all Palestinian and then recognize it. What's the point? Recognize them.
I think it's the right thing to do. I'm not sure it will change the facts on the ground for the Palestinians, but the world needs to support them in this miserable time they're having. I wish for more action, but I don't expect it, unfortunately. I think it's mainly symbolism.
Meanwhile, the United Nations General Assembly has voted to allow Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to address the upcoming session via video after the United States barred him and other senior officials from attending in person. The resolution was passed by a vote with 145 assenting, 5 saying nay, and 6 abstentions expressed a regret over the US decision, and also now permits Abbas to participate remotely in this joint Saudi-French hosted summit on the two-state solution in New York. Washington earlier defended its ban, arguing that it can deny visas for security and foreign policy reasons, despite criticism that the move violates the 1947 UN headquarters agreement. Israel and the United States were among the 5 countries that voted against the measure. This decision comes as several Western nations, including the UK, Canada, Australia, Portugal, and now France as well, moving to formally recognize a Palestinian state. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Peter Baum, Foreign Affairs Editor. Thank you so much for staying put. In the meantime, we've also seen interesting statements come in from Emmanuel Macron. He has in fact backed the recognition of a Palestinian state, but at the same time he has stated that a French embassy will not be opening in Palestine anytime soon until and unless the hostages are exchanged. He has also in fact gone on to oppose any plans to displace Palestinians from Gaza as part of future rebuilding efforts, plans that are being mooted by the Trump administration in order to create a Riviera in the Middle East. What, in your assessment, needs to be done as far as post-war reconstruction is concerned? Of course, the end of the war does not seem in sight, but considering the fact that the Trump administration is already mulling displacing the Palestinians.
Okay, a lot to take in there. Let's talk about post-war Gaza. When this current conflict finally ends, any morally decent person would hope that there is no room for Hamas in its present or previous format. That's not to say that it could not rise as a political force, but as a military or a terrorist force, it should have no stake in the reconstruction of Palestine. The United States will play a major role in the reconstruction, as will friendly Arab countries who have already agreed who are already participants in the Abraham Accords. So countries such as Saudi and the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, of course, and Egypt would play a major part in its reconstruction. In the meantime, it's clear that Israel, with the backing of the United States, has the green light to destroy the Hamas infrastructure as a terrorist organization. And during this period, then we've seen Gazans moving out of Gaza City along what they call human corridors to safety. Now, as we speak, it's estimated that over half of Gazans' civilian population has removed themselves from Gaza City and are vacating their homes. This leaves a much easier route for the Israeli military to achieve their objective. Now, whether they achieve it or not is yet to be seen, and that will also determine the role that Hamas plays in any future Palestinian state. If Hamas is defeated militarily, which is the objective of the Israelis and the Americans, and I must say all morally decent people, then there is a chance for peace in that area. If Hamas remains, whether in a political form or with some military power still, then I'm afraid peace is unachievable. The Israelis just simply won't accept Hamas being a participant in a Palestinian state.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World, sharing your perspective. More news coming in from the Middle East. We're now learning that displaced Palestinians fleeing Gaza City along the Al-Rashid Road towards the southern strip describe their lives as unsustainable, with many saying that death is in fact a better alternative. Meanwhile, Israel's ongoing airstrikes and tank shelling have devastated the city, leaving infrastructure destroyed and basic services collapsing as well. Many Palestinians are now suffering through a dire humanitarian crisis. The United Nations has declared a famine in the Palestinian enclave, with thousands struggling to escape the violence and seek safety along the Mediterranean coast. Listen in to what the displaced Palestinians have had to say.
احنا ايش ذنبنا؟ احنا ايش ذنبنا؟ احنا ناس ابرياء مالناش في الحروب، احنا بندعي للسلام، احنا وين ما نروح بنرفع الرايه البيضاء وبندعي للسلام، وبندعي العالم كله يطلع عنا، بكفي، احنا صرنا نتمنى الموت، افضل من الحياه هذه، لانه احنا كل يوم بنموت مليون مره.
بكفي، تعبنا ورهقنا وما ضلش فينا حيل ومش قادرين نمشي. انا بدي امشي الحين حوالي مش اقل من 20-30 كيلو معي الحمل هذا بصير.
Shifting focus to more news coming in, South Korea's president is warning that his country could face economic crisis as severe as the 1997 meltdown if it bows to U.S. demands in stalled trade talks. President Lee Jae-myung has stated that Washington wants Seoul to commit $350 billion in cash investment in exchange for lower U.S. tariffs under a deal first floated in July, but he cautioned that without safeguards like a currency swap, such a move could destabilize South Korea's economy. The president's comments come as he prepares to travel to New York, where he will be addressing the UN General Assembly and chair a Security Council meeting as well. Lee, who took office in June after the ouster of his conservative predecessor, states that he wants to reassure the world that democratic Korea is back. Listen in.
통화 스와프가 되지 않는 상태에서 3,500억 달러를 인출해서 지금 미국이 요구하는 방식으로 전액 현금으로 송금 투자해야 되는 상황이라면 대한민국은 다시 IMF를 맞게 됩니다. 현대 건설 공장의 노동자들을 아주 가혹한 방식으로 체포하고 구금했던 점에 대해서는 우리 국민들은 매우 놀라고 당황스러워하고 있는 것은 분명합니다. 또 상당한 분노들도 있지요. 그러나 저는 이 사건이 트럼프 대통령이 지휘해서 미국이 정책적으로 한 일은 아니라고 생각해요. 특히 상업 거래에 있어서는 모두가 합리적으로 동의할 수 있는 상업적 합리성이 있어야죠. 그건 이미 문서상으로 서로 얘기된 것인데 상업적 합리성이 보장되는 세부 협의를 이뤄내는 것, 지금 이게 핵심적인 과제인데 가장 핵심적인 장애물이 되고 있기도 합니다. 우리 대한민국 정부로서도 저 자신부터 국방비 증액의 필요성, 자주 국방력 강화라고 하는데 관심이 높고 그 부분에 대해서 추가의 투자를 할 계획을 이미 가지고 있기 때문에 미국이 한반도의 평화와 안정을 위해서 일방적으로 손실을 분담하는 사태는 그리 바람직하다고 생각하지 않기 때문에 그 문제는 크게 갈등은 없다고 보여집니다.
Joining us on the broadcast is Dr. Satoru Nagao, fellow at the Hudson Institute in Tokyo. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. On one hand, we do know that Seoul and Washington are very close allies. They cooperate very closely as far as their military ties and exercises in the in the Indo-Pacific is concerned. That's not all. We now do know that Trump has floated rather steep demands in exchange for lower tariffs. So in your assessment, how should President Lee navigate this precarious situation?
South Korea has already agreed this investment in July. So that's why if the South Korea cannot invest size they agreed, there is a possibility situation will return before the agreement. So in this case, negotiation will restart and it will be nightmare for work, I think. But at the same time, if South Korea cannot return to such kind of situation, there is another possibility South Korea